Alright, so I'm just gonna be upfront here. My plan for today was to go over the North American and the South American major regional qualifier results and talk about those 6 teams making it into the Austin Major. While I was working on that and gathering footage, I realized that there is a story here that deserves its own video separate from the rest of that coverage. So if you're here for that coverage like I did for EU yesterday, sit tight, it'll be here tomorrow, I promise. But today we're going to be focused on specifically Wildcard, who made it into the Austin Major through the NA MRQ. And the problem kind of starts with the whole NA part, because I don't really know how to phrase this, but based on my understanding of the VRS rules, the rules for the Austin Major, Wildcard should not have been able to compete in this region's qualifier. So today we're going to break down some very confusing language within Valve's rules, how we even got here, and how these holes in the rules can be patched up to avoid these kind of issues in subsequent majors. Now, because we're talking about a pretty touchy subject, I don't really feel comfortable airing a sponsor ad on this video. Essentially, this is me calling out Wildcard. It feels a little bit hypocritical of me to use it as a vehicle to generate profit for myself. I mean, there's still ads on the video, but hey, listen, guys gotta eat anyways. Point is, I'm not running an ad. Just kind of feels weird to do it. However, if you guys could do me a solid and like the video, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and let me know what you guys think about this in those comments, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to hit 10K by the end of the year, and it helps out immensely. Anyways, with all that out of the way, let's start getting into the weeds here. So obviously, as we all know, the VRS has been pretty weird in this inaugural season of this new system that we are all forced to abide under in Pro Counter-Strike. There's been a ton of issues with how the VRS works, how points are assigned, how teams are granted what region they get, and it's definitely led to a lot of confusion because these rules are not very clear in the first place. So let's take it one step at a time. How are you assigned a region within the VRS? Well, it boils down to the composition of your team's roster. If you have 3 NA players and 2 EU players, you are considered a North American majority team. However, if you have an even split, let's say you have 2 NA players and 2 EU players, then 1 player within, say, the Asia region, things get a little bit more complicated. Basically, in this above example, if there was a VRS update, a team that has 2 NA, 2 EU, and 1 Asia player would receive a ranking within the Americas region of the VRS and 1 within the Europe region of the VRS. If we go to the GitHub link with the VRS regional standings and go look at the cutoff update from March 3rd, you'll see that Wildcard is ranked 15th in EU, while simultaneously being ranked 5th in North America. So if we were to cut off the VRS at March 3rd and then give invites for the major, where would Wildcard go? Well, if we go over to another GitHub link with the CS Major Rulebook, it reads this passage. In the event that a team would be invited to a particular stage based on more than 1 regional VRS, they are considered to have been invited based on the region with greater representation in the major, i.e. Europe, then America, then Asia. No matter what, it always goes EU, NA, Asia. Keep that in mind. So in this case, for the Austin Major, had Blast had the cutoff at March 3rd, Wildcard would have been put into the EU MRQ instead of the NA one because it always goes to the region with more representation. So why didn't they play in EU this time? It's because the cutoff date for the Austin Major was on April 7th. And if you go look at the VRS update for April 7th and take a scroll through the EU section, you'll notice that Wildcard aren't there anymore. They didn't just drop off the rankings entirely. I mean, they were previously ranked 15th literally a month ago, so where are they? Well, if you go look at the Americas update for that same time frame, you notice that Wildcard is ranked 7th, but with a different roster. Their roster at this cutoff date is JBA, Sonic, Stanislaw, Stewie 2K, and Sus P. Posey is not in the lineup for this cutoff. That would mean, for the purposes of qualification into the Austin Major, the lineup of Wildcard that features 3 NA players, 1 EU player, and 1 South African player was the roster that was used. That means with an NA majority, Wildcard then earned the NA invite to the MRQs. Okay, fair enough. I hear you asking, does that mean that Wildcard played the NA MRQs with Stewie 2K instead of Fozzy? No, and that's the issue. Stewie2K was not a roster change for Wildcard, he was a stand-in for PGL Astana's qualifiers, the last VRS event that Wildcard attended before the April 7th cutoff. Hopefully, you're starting to see a bit of the issue here. Stewie2K is not their permanent 5th, FOZY is, so even though they were invited based on a majority NA lineup, they are playing with a 2 NA, 2 EU, 1 South African lineup in the NA qualifier. Now, I laid all of that out in a very intentional way here because I'm not trying to assign intent or any kind of malice towards what Wildcard may or may not have done in this situation. However, based on my reading and understanding of the rules here, I do think something was done that should not have been allowed. And I think this largely went under the radar because there was just a lot of stuff going on elsewhere in the scene in the beginning of April, so I wasn't even really that aware of it until Swisher tweeted out about this at the beginning of the NA MRQs a few days ago and brought it to attention. And I think he is correct here. Based on the roster that Wildcard have played for the entire year, going all the way back to the Shanghai Major, they should not have been playing in this MRQ. And when you consider that the EU MRQ was a total bloodbath, as we covered in yesterday's video, I think it is fair to say that they would have had a more difficult time qualifying out of that field. I have a lot of respect for Wildcard, and I really like their roster, so I'd like to believe they would have made it out regardless, but you compare the level of competition in the NA MRQ to the EU one, and it's not even close. On their way out of Group B, who did Wildcard play? They played Marsborn and NRG. Marsborn, with their 813 VRS score at the April cutoff, would have been ranked in the high 40s in Europe, amongst teams like Monty, Delta, Zero Tenacity, NIP. Whereas NRG would have been the company of teams like Navi Jr., Metasport, 9, ENCE. So I think this is a valid criticism to bring it up, not so much to rag on Wildcard, but to point out that this is a flaw within VRS, a flaw that Valve were trying to solve because of what happened at Shanghai last year with the Drillas. We all know what happened, where Drillas used substitute players to allow them to get by with a roster that only had one player from the Asia region in their lineup in the Asia RMR. Obviously, that's an issue, and I'm not saying that what Wildcards have done is as extreme as that, but it's worth pointing out that they use the cutoff dates to their advantage, either intentionally or not. So with that out of the way, how could this potentially be solved so we can prevent this issue in future major qualifiers? Well, one, I'm certainly no expert, and two, things are pretty difficult when it comes to declaring for regions. Let's take Wildcard as another example. Sonic is listed as a South African player. Sonic has also played the entirety of his pro career in North America for North American teams, has lived in North America for many years, went to school here. The only reason he is not considered North America for the purposes of this discussion is that he has a different flag on his HLTV profile page. So already things get really muddy. So I don't think we need to hyper focus on the regionality aspect as much as we do the roster aspect. And I think one thing that could instantly solve this problem is that stand-ins don't get considered for your regional placement on a VRS cutoff date. So if we go back to this April 7 cutoff for Wildcard, their listed roster has Stewie as their 5th, not FOZY. Stewie was never listed as a permanent stand-in, a permanent substitute, or a permanent addition to this roster, and neither was FOZY struck away from this roster at any point during Stewie's playtime with Wildcard. So for the purpose of the VRS cutoff, he should not be considered as a part of their roster. FOZY should. It should not be hard to delineate that a stand-in does not count towards the makeup of a team's regionality, and that would have instantly solved this problem because Wildcard's actual roster would have been the one that was used at this cutoff date. Now that does introduce some issues because if they accrue VRS points without FOZY, should he benefit from them? But honestly, I just don't really care. I think we're kind of just mincing words. We're kind of like clutching at straws at that point. This just allows teams to not be able to use stand-ins as a way of obfuscating the rules here, which is what has happened regardless of whether Wildcard did it intentionally or not. Overall, since the VRS has been introduced, there have been a litany of issues, but I still maintain that the core philosophy of what the system is trying to provide is worth pursuing, because any method of trying to bring things together in a uniform manner that Valve manages makes a lot of sense to me. We have a lot of disparate parts and a large sprawling scene, so having an overseeing authority makes a lot of sense. However, Valve move in slow, mysterious ways, and there are going to be gaps that teams take advantage of along the way. And in my reading, I think that Wildcard have benefited from a gap in the rulebook's logic. Because of that, Wildcard will be representing NA at the Austin Major, and honestly, I wish them well. Again, I like this roster, I like this organization, I want these players to succeed. Please do not make this out to be a witch hunt. I am simply here reporting on an obvious issue that does need to be investigated so that teams in the future can't take advantage of it going forward into other competitions. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm really curious to hear from you on this one. Do you guys think that Wildcard should have been put into the EU MRQ? Am I reading into things that aren't there? Do you think that they just did what they needed to do to get as far into the major as possible? All of those are pretty justifiable things, and I'm willing to hear you out. So let's have that discussion. While you're there, make sure you like the video and subscribe as well. Helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm and helps me reach 10K by the end of the year. Like I said, no sponsors today. I didn't feel comfortable doing it as this is a serious discussion. I didn't want to be clouded in that judgment. So make sure you guys help me out by liking and subscribing like I already said. Thank you to my channel members, Justin, Jesse, Furley, Milan Berta, Bubblesj, Dr. Cocktor, Patatas Kaftesi, PTR, B1 Games, Cody Foxworthy, Justin Vander Veit, I'm Flashbang, Snowmy White, Rowdy, Vergil'sPlasticChair, and Sid Pro 12. If you want to become a channel member, you can do so with the link in the description down below for $5. Make sure you like and share the video just like this, as well as the customer on the community Discord. Follow me on Twitter, LionHeartZ2. Woo!